Maybe toppling the Gaddafi regime was the easy part. Libya's new rulers are now committed to building a united democratic state from the ruins of the colonel's dictatorship. Can it be done? Well, as yet, there's no fully functioning government in Tripoli. My guest today, the chief operations manager of Libya's stabilization team, Aref Ali Nayed, is in Dubai, where he also happens to be Libya's ambassador. So how long will it take for the new Libya to emerge? Aref Ali Nayed in Dubai, welcome to Hardtalk.
Thank you.
There is no fully functioning central government in Tripoli. Why not?
Well, I don't think that that's an accurate statement, actually. The caretaker executive team has been in Tripoli. And from the very early days of the liberation of Tripoli, Dr. Ali Tarhouni, the deputy prime minister, came into Tripoli, and ministers also. And government is being run out of the building of the prime ministership or the prime minister's office. Most ministers are in Tripoli, or at least have been in Tripoli. Some of them have gone to Benghazi for consultations, but there is a central government.
Well, it's interesting the way you phrase it. Most ministers, you say, have been in Tripoli, and indeed, I dare say, most of them have at one time or another, but it's clear that a lot of them are not staying in Tripoli. There isn't this sense of a coherent central government, fully functioning, with ministries operating in the capital city. And let me just quote you, a UN official in Tripoli, Ahmed Fawzi, the other day said, they need to be seen to be running the country from Tripoli, and we haven't seen it yet.
Well, I have seen every single minister in Tripoli and held meetings with all ministers in Tripoli. Cabinet meetings happened in Tripoli. As you know, we are very much in transition. This particular week was a very busy week in New York and in Washington, and several of the highest level officials were out of the country for those meetings. And there has been extensive consultations in Benghazi and also in Misrata and Zintan and Zawiya and several other cities. I hope that you don't see these consultations as a weakness. You should be seeing them as a strength of the government. There is a seat of government. The president and the prime minister, deputy prime minister, all the ministers have functioned and are functioning from Tripoli. So I think that the notion that there is no central government is inaccurate and actually dangerous. If you're looking for central command and control of the type that Gaddafi exercised, we have had a revolution precisely because we don't want that kind of up-down government. What you have now is a network of networks of people who are in touch with their localities and who are able to keep the country together and keep the main functions of government going. People do have electricity, water, basic health, schools have reopened, banks have reopened. So I think we have to be fair with what's happening.
No, I don't underestimate the infrastructure achievements there have been in Tripoli. I've seen the reports of the utilities coming back on stream and everything else. But here's what Mustafa Faturi, a Libyan political analyst who's been writing a lot about the state of governance and politics in your country, says. He says the current National Transitional Council lacks vision, legitimacy and power on the ground. And those who have legitimacy, he says, are by and large the people who actually fought in the war.
Well, I respect every Libyan's views, and every Libyan is entitled to their views. The way I see it is, I feel that the National Transitional Council has consensus on legitimacy and of legitimacy of unprecedented kind. Not since King Idris's time have we seen a true national consensus. And this consensus is real. Legitimacy is provided by all the Libyan people. We must understand that fighting has much broader meanings than just shooting guns. Mothers who lost their children and people who have fed the young fighters, and people who have supplied them, and people who have made all arrangements for taking care of the wounded, and so on. All these heroic Libyans who have worked so hard are part of this revolution, and the legitimacy is ultimately with the Libyan people, not with any subset of the Libyan people. And I believe that the National Transitional Council has that legitimacy. As for the power on the ground, well, they're keeping the country together, liberating one town and city after the other. Libya is a vast country of 1,750,000 kilometers squared, and it's not an easy task. And I think the council has done an amazing job.
Let's talk about security specifically. Obviously, the first priority, the first obligation of any governing authority has to be to ensure the security of its people and to command and control the armed and security forces. This again is about legitimacy, isn't it? In the sense that the National Transitional Council actually doesn't control many of the armed forces who fight in its name. We've seen from Sirte to Bani Walid and many other places that actually on the ground command and control sits with different militias.
Well, I don't like the word militias. I don't think it's a proper word to use for our heroic young people. These young people were not military personnel. They had to fight for their freedom and for the freedom of Libya. And, what's most important is that if you ask any of these young people who they're fighting for, they will tell you that they're fighting for Libya. And if you ask them if they recognize and answer to the National Transitional Council and its head, Mr. Mustafa Abdul Jalil, they will tell you, of course. So, you keep looking for this centralized army with top-down kind of exertion of power. That's exactly what the people revolted against. That's not the kind of tyranny that we want. And so long as everybody is fighting for the same cause and are united around the vision of a democratic and free Libya, I see all these forces as part of the forces of the National Transitional Council, because that's how they see themselves.
Well,
and that is
hang on, let me stop you for a moment.
From the ground up.
Your assertion is interesting, but let me quote you just one commander, for example, Ishmael Salah, the commander of forces in Benghazi, who has Islamist affiliations and who's made it quite plain that he opposes the involvement of so many former Gaddafi officials at the top of the National Transitional Council.
Of course, I have tremendous respect for this young man who led many battles for the freedom of the country. And when you quote him, you must understand that he speaks in two capacities. He speaks as a commander in a group of young fighters, and as such, he does obey the orders of the head of the National Transitional Council, Mustafa Abdul Jalil, has always asserted that he is affiliated with the National Transitional Council. Now, he also has another capacity. As a fellow Libyan, he's entitled to his personal opinion, and he can have any opinion he likes. And that's the beauty. That's what we fought for. So I also don't like the use of these adjectives, Islamists and non-Islamists and so on. The Libyan people are Muslim people, and I think these adjectives are not that helpful, to tell you the truth. They're divisive and can actually lead to a kind of polarization, which the country can definitely do without.
Well, I want to talk more about that in a moment. Before we get there, let's just finish on this idea about what's happening on the ground with the different elements of the military under the control of the National Transitional Council. Again, we've seen commanders on the ground around Sirte, for example, where the attempt is obviously to finally, once and for all, take the town, claim that there's a lack of organization, there's a lack of resources and ammunition getting to the front line. It's the same sort of story we've heard from time to time in Bani Walid. The question is, how long is it going to take to mop up the remaining pockets of resistance and indeed to do as you want to do, and that is capture or kill Gaddafi?
Well, I don't like the word mop up, and I don't like seeing any fellow Libyans as objects of any aggressive activity. The reason these campaigns are taking so long is because the National Transitional Council and the heroic fighters from Misrata, from the east, from Zintan, from Zawiya, from Tripoli, all recognize that they are dealing with fellow Libyans. They have been incredibly patient, trying to negotiate a way into these towns, and trying to ask the population to liberate itself rather than be in any way invaded from the outside. No Libyan will accept that kind of imposition of will on any fellow Libyans, and we already see these strategies working. Many people are either fleeing these cities where there are concentrations of Kataib and mercenaries who want to fight on, and we are seeing many towns that have liberated themselves in the south, tens and tens of towns. Unfortunately, people focus on these couple of cases where we're having some difficulties, but these difficulties are accepted difficulties in that the National Transitional Council and the young fighters are being patient and prudent, and they want to achieve the liberation of these towns with the least bloodshed.
You're chief of the stabilization team. Can there be stability in Libya as long as Gaddafi remains uncaptured and free to, as he is, broadcast his messages of defiance?
Well, I think these messages of defiance are meaningless and actually ludicrous, and it is possible to have a stable Libya. Of course, he will be annoying us from time to time, but this annoyance does not amount to any real challenge to the sovereignty, integrity, and unity of Libya. It is possible for Libya to be stable. I would like to add that the chairman of the stabilization team is Dr. Ahmed Ijhani, who is the Minister of Reconstruction and Infrastructure, and the stabilization team is over 70 young Libyans who are working very hard with all the local councils. So it's actually hundreds and hundreds of Libyans who are together stabilizing their country.
If the stabilization team is indeed so big and so impressively led, how come so many thousands of weapons, including anti-tank shells, mortar rounds, many other serious weapons, have been allowed to be stolen out of your stockpiles?
Well, you can try to guard so many sites in such a vast area, even with a well-organized and centrally commanded army, and you will see the challenge. It has taken years for your forces and those of the Americans to make inroads in Afghanistan, for example. Libya is a vast, vast country, and our forces are quite small and also quite scattered.
But would you acknowledge that you failed? Yeah. I mean, in recent months, we have seen, and BBC reporters have been to many of these sites, that some of them are completely unguarded, and it is now clear, as Peter Beckett of Human Rights Watch says, that very serious weaponry, indeed the key ingredients, for example, for car bombs, have slipped out of the hands of the authorities and are in the hands of goodness knows whom, either inside Libya or more particularly outside Libya as well.
Well, there is such a thing as fog of war, and in fog of war many things do happen. You can say that we failed or that we've succeeded depending on what perspective you use. I think given the limited resources, given the scattered nature of these young fighters, given the vast country, given the amazingly vast arsenals that are all over the place, unidentified and unmapped, it is actually, we have succeeded. If you would like to be cynical about it, of course you can call it a failure if you like, but I think that in many situations it's a matter of your judgment.
Yeah, it's not a question of cynicism, Mr. Nayed, it's just a question of listening to people like Agostinho Miozzo, the EU Special Envoy in Tripoli, who said the huge number of weapons in circulation now and the unsecured borders pose a risk to Europe and to other nations.
Well, it's also the case that many arsenals have been secured, but many dangerous materials have been secured. And I think you have to be fair when you're judging to make sure that you're comparing resources to the task at hand and the circumstances in which we're working.
All right, we've talked quite a lot in this interview about legitimacy. Let's now talk about future divisions within the polity, the politics of Libya. Would you accept that there is growing evidence of Islamist, and maybe you don't like the word, but Islamist frustration with post-Gaddafi politics?
Look, you know, any divisive adjectives or adjectives that polarize people are not helpful.
Well, what would you describe the Libyan Muslim Brotherhood as, if not Islamist? What would you describe them as?
I would simply call them as the Muslim the Muslim Brotherhood. You know, why call it Islamist? And also you run the risk of lumping together all shades of Islamic movements by just using one adjective to group them all together. I think that the approach has to be nuanced, and also the future Libya and the free Libya is a polyphony of voices. We're tired of the monotonic and the unified so-called unified vision of Gaddafi being imposed on the people. It's a rich mosaic of tendencies, and of course the Muslim Brotherhood will be there, many other tendencies will be there, liberals will be there will be secularists, there will be, but every time you use an adjective, one has to use it cautiously, because even those adjectives, when applied to the Libyan context, are unique.
I take your point about caution, and I know that you have worked a great deal on Islamic scholarship. You're a theology academic. You have worked on interfaith programs around the world. I know all of that, and I just wonder, for example, when there's a real discussion inside your country about the role of Sharia law, and we've seen public demonstrations in recent days, hundreds of people on the streets demanding that Libya fully adopt Sharia law. What is your view of that? Do you think that is going to be something that will underpin the future Libya?
Well, look, the Libyan people are a Muslim people, and don't expect a Muslim people to in any way disparage Sharia. The problem is that people often miss the point that Sharia has many meanings, and the traditional meaning with which it has traditionally been viewed in Libya is as a way to our Creator, and as a way of living according to our Creator's wishes for humanity. It is a way, it is a trajectory, it is an intentionality. What is most important is that traditionally it is the spirit of the law rather than just a set of rules. And when Libyans longed for Sharia, it is this longing for a spiritual path. And I believe that to legalize it too much, or to think of it as a set of simple rules without context and without, for example, judge-based interpretation and exegesis and so on, is to oversimplify things.
Okay, a final thought on this then. As you well know, the military commander in Tripoli is Abdul Hakim Belhaj, who was for years a member of the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group. Now, that has caused some attention to be sort of focused on it in Washington, D.C., more than perhaps anywhere else, where the Washington Post has U.S. officials saying that they are, quote, concerned about Islamist influence in the Libyan revolution, and saying that we will definitely be watching to see whether their pronouncements that they have nothing to do with jihadi movements is for real or just for show. Will you be watching too?
Well, all Libyans, especially young Libyans, will be watchful of everyone, and will be watchful of all tendencies. What I can assure you is that three things will never happen in Libya again through the vigilance of young people. Tyranny will never happen again, and corruption will never happen again, and the overpowering by one tendency of other tendencies will never happen again. And the guarantee for this is nothing but the will of the young people. They're massively smart, very incredibly well informed. They are up to date, and they will be able to watch this revolution to make sure that it doesn't kidnap by anyone. Now, the one thing about Tripoli, all Tripolitanians know that the liberation of Tripoli happened through an incredible spontaneous movement, an uprising by every single street in the capital. The Tripolitanians themselves rose up, and they were helped by all Libyans surrounding them, from Zawiya, from Zintan, from the other towns in the Nafusa mountain, and from Misrata. and it was a collective effort. I know that because of Al Jazeera and some particular angle on some of the programming, there has been a focus on particular personalities, but rest assured that the young Libyans know that this was a distributed revolution, that it was everyone's revolution, and everyone is a guard of this revolution. I have the utmost respect for Mr. Bilhaj and all his colleagues who have fought so hard for liberation, and I am sure that they are just as keen as all other Libyans to safeguard the country and to make sure that democracy is fully exercised by all tendencies in a unified and peaceful Libya.
Let's talk about justice. You've said, I don't think there should be a witch hunt, purges or cleansings. But there has to be justice, doesn't there? Not least, for example, for the families of those hundreds and hundreds of victims found in mass graves near the Abu Salim prison, victims of Gaddafi's regime. There has to be justice, does there not?
Yeah, I think from the same passage that you're quoting, I also said that there has to be justice. And of course, I'm a big believer in forgiveness, but forgiveness can only happen willfully and through real, true consent. You have to provide justice to these families, and then if they want to forgive, then that is their right to forgive. And you know, in Islam, it is very much encouraged that you forgive, but you can only forgive after you do justice. And of course, transitional justice is of the utmost importance. The stabilization team has been working with the Justice Ministry and the UN and other international partners on transitional justice issues, and it is very, very important that we, as soon as possible, put on trial those criminals who have Libyan blood on their hands.
And what about those
to achieve justice?
Yeah, and what about those who are implicated in what Amnesty International calls clear prima facie evidence of war crimes by forces loyal to the National Transitional Council, particularly crimes committed against sub-Saharan Africans and black Libyans who are accused of being mercenaries?
Whoever abused any other human being should be put on trial. It doesn't matter what their affiliation is, because our true affiliation is to humanity as such. And anybody who violates human rights should be put on trial, even if he is an official or a government ministry.
Currently, you've got more than 2,000 people apparently in detention under NTC auspices. How many of those are in detention and facing trial because of crimes committed supposedly on the side of the National Transitional Council?
Well, I cannot give you the. I do not know the figures, you know, off the top of my head. But what I can tell you is that at least several people have been arrested for committing violations after the revolution. So revolutionaries have no immunity. True revolutionaries are the people who uphold human rights, no matter who violates them. These human rights, those violators will be put on trial, and those human rights have to be upheld.
Very quickly, Ambassador, we're almost out of time. I just want to put your mind toward the question of oil and Libya's economic reconstruction. Something remarkable said by the French trade minister recently. He said the Libyan authorities know what they owe to France, and we aren't going to be embarrassed about helping our companies benefit from this advantage. Does that mean that France, maybe the UK as well, are going to get an awful lot of contracts as the oil industry has opened up from your administration?
Well, what I can tell you is that the decision for awarding future contracts will be with the future elected government of Libya. There is a general policy of maintaining legal contracts that are prima facie legitimate contracts.
But will there be rewards for those supporters of yours, those who intervened on your behalf?
I can tell you this, that such decisions will be the decisions of an elected government. No caretaker government can make that kind of decision. I can tell you my personal opinion. I believe that whoever helped us should have helped us for the good of humanity and for moral reasons. I do not think that there should be any allotment of contracts based on any special effort in support of the Libyan people. And this is very important, because I think entitlement should not be neither for Libyans or non-Libyans based on effort in this revolution, because whoever fought for the Libyan people should have done so for the sake of much higher values than just material gain.
Ambassador Aref Ali Nayed, thank you very much for being on Hard Talk. We have to end there. Thank you.
Thank you.